What's going on, guys? This is Ryan from Bible Dingers, and I am here to bring you yet another installment of the Prolegomena series. I don't know why you're still here. You must be a glutton for punishment. But today we are going to be talking about terms that relate to eschatology.
Prolegomena, it's a word you probably never heard until just now.
Eschatology is the study of last things or future events. So the first term you're going to need to know when it comes to eschatology is millennium. You probably know what millennium means in regular day-to-day life. That means 1,000-year period. However, when it comes to eschatology, we're talking about a specific millennium in Revelation 20. There's basically four eschatological views based on this millennium that is described in Revelation 20. So let's get into that right now. The first view is Amillennialism. So this is the view that there will be no literal 1,000-year bodily reign of Christ on earth before the final judgment. The millennium in Revelation 20 is today's church age. And it's more so metaphorical and not a literal 1,000-year reign on earth of bodily Christ and bodily people, so on and so forth. The next view is Post-Millennialism. This is basically the belief that the millennium is an age of peace and righteousness on earth that is brought about by the spread and advancement of the gospel and the church. So after this 1,000 years of peace and righteousness on earth, then Christ will return to earth for the second time. Maybe the third or fourth or fifth times if you believe in pre-incarnate Christ, but I don't know. The last two views, major views of eschatology, are historical premillennialism and dispensational premillennialism. There are differences between the two, but basically both of them can be summed up in premillennialism, which is a belief that essentially Jesus will return prior to the millennium described in Revelation 20. Next, we're going to go over a few miscellaneous terms that refer to eschatology. The first one is Antichrist. This is the man of lawlessness that appears before Christ's return, according to some views, or it could also be anyone that is in opposition to Christ. This is the Antichrist. Antichrist. Next is the Great Tribulation. So basically, this is an expression from Matthew 24:21, and it describes a period of suffering that is to occur prior to Christ's return. That is the Great Tribulation. Next, you'll hear a few cool phrases that you only know if you're in the know and in the loop and in the cool. That is pre-trib, mid-trib, or post-trib. So that means pre-tribulational, mid-tribulational, or post-tribulational, and all of these terms are referring to a rapture of the church out of the earth. If you are pre-trib, that means you believe it is before the Great Tribulation. If you are mid-trib, it means you believe it is during the tribulation. If you are post-trib, it means that you believe the rapture is after the tribulation. I would like to say that these views are mostly within the premillennial system of beliefs that believes there is a 7-year tribulation that will occur prior to Christ's return. Next, there is final judgment, and this is the judgment that is talked about in Revelation as well. This is the last and ultimate proclamation of eternal destinies of all people. That is the final judgment, and that's interchangeable with another term that you should know, which is the Great White Throne Judgment. This is just another way of saying the final judgment. Next, we are going to talk about some terms that relate to hell. because this is actually a part of eschatology. Death, heaven, hell, and the last days are all part of eschatology, even though when people think of eschatology, they mostly only think of the events or the things in Revelation, Daniel, things like that, that supposedly describe the end of the world or potentially now. I'm trying to be very political about this, as you can tell. So the first term that you need to know when it comes to hell is annihilationism. So annihilationism is a belief that after death, unbelievers will suffer some punishment or potentially no punishment, and then they are going to be wiped out of existence. Next is conditional immortality. So this usually goes hand in hand with annihilationism. Some people will even use it interchangeably with annihilationism as a preferred term for their beliefs about hell. It basically focuses on the fact that eternal life is only gifted to believers, and unbelievers do not have that gift. Therefore, their immortality, or our immortality, is conditional. We only get eternal life if we come to salvation. So that's where we get the term conditional immortality. Next is the term eternal conscious torment. So this is probably the most common belief about hell in the American church, at least. And this is basically that after death, unbelievers will be tormented in hell, fully aware and unendingly. Next is purgatory. So this is a predominantly Roman Catholic belief that after death, the soul goes to be further purified from sin until it's essentially ready to enter into heaven. And lastly, there is Universalism. So Universalism, the definition is typically a little loosey-goosey. They basically believe that all people will ultimately be saved. So whether that's immediately upon death they go to heaven, no matter what their beliefs were, or if some Universalists believe that if you're a Christian, you die and go straight to heaven. If you're not, you die and you go to hell for a period of time, and then you serve your punishment there and then eventually make it to heaven after your punishment is finished. Maranatha is an Aramaic term used in 1 Corinthians 16:22, which means "Come, Lord," and it corresponds to basically being eager for Jesus to come back. You say, "Maranatha, please come back. Jesus, I can't wait for you to come back. Maranatha." Soul sleep is the belief that believers go into a state of basically unconscious existence after death, and they will return to consciousness when Christ returns and raises them to eternal life. And lastly is spiritual body. So this is the type of body we receive at future resurrection, which resembles Christ's resurrection body. That is our spiritual body, also known as your glorified body, also known as your body.